Okay, welcome to round 6 of the Tuesday night marathon here at the San Francisco Mechanics Institute. So, I'll give the great Simpkins one moment here. So we have in the chess world, what's going on now is the World Cup in Khanty-Mansiysk there in Siberia. And so that's quite an event, 128 of the best chess players in the world. And of those 128, it's a knockout. They're playing 2-game matches with tie breaks until they get to the semifinals. But only 2 out of the 128 qualify for the candidates tournament. So Fabiano Caruana is not there. Being the challenger, he's already qualified. And some people, there's 2 people that can also qualify from the Grand Prix. There's someone from rating that qualifies. There's one that the organizers of the candidates tournament can nominate, providing they're sufficiently high rated. And then there's something called a Grand Swiss for the last of the 8 spots. But this is quite an event in Khanty-Mansiysk. The prize fund is actually $1.6 million. That's a lot of money in the chess world. And the first prize for whoever wins the event is $110,000. Of course, that's hard being first out of the 128-player field. You might wonder why they have so much money there. And Khanty-Mansiysk, it's there in the middle of nowhere. It's in Siberia. But they've got oil there. And they're in Russia, a country that really loves chess. So they've hosted a couple of chess Olympiads. They've hosted some of these World Cups and other events. And it's one of the chess meccas of the world, kind of along with St. Louis. But it's 12 hours difference there. So they played the first round. The games begin at 3 a.m. our time, which I think is about 3 in the afternoon their time, being way on the other side of the world. One person who played there was Ding Liren, who just won the Sinquefield Cup. And Ding will probably qualify to the candidates tournament by rating. But anyway, he wanted to play this event. Siberia is not that far from China in the scheme of things. And he was the number 1 rated player there. He played against international master called Sean Press, who maybe you haven't heard of. Mike, I don't know if you've heard of him. He's from Papua New Guinea. Yes. I read that much. Okay. He's a very nice fellow from Papua New Guinea, but part of your British Empire that spread to Australia and New Zealand.
Are they using tennis pairings where the top guy plays they don't do it like first half against second half, where the top guy in the first half plays the top guy in the second half. They do it first, the top guy plays the worst guy.
Very, very good, Elliot. Yes, and in our Tuesday night marathon, you take the group of ratings, split it up, and the first plays the one below the middle. But there in the World Cup, the very top-rated player, Ding Liren, plays the very lowest-rated player from Papua New Guinea.
What was his previous game that he played? He went from Carlsen to, what's his name again? Press?
Sean Press.
So last time, didn't Carlsen play it last time around?
He has, yes, one time he played it just to play. I don't know if it was the last time or the time before that. He just wanted an event. And Ding Liren really doesn't have to play this tournament, but he might quite like the $110,000 he could win, or just to be sure, in case something goes wrong with his rating spot. Except he's pretty clearly the top-rated person outside of the champion Carlsen and the challenger Caruana.
Is it a knockout or a round-up, or a Swiss?
This is a knockout. And which gets us to our point. These are very short knockout matches. And you play 2 games, one with white, one with black. If it's tied after 2 games, then you play a rapid game. And if it's tied after the rapid, you play blitz. But you'd like to win in the classical chess. It's only 2 games, though. And if you draw with white or horribly lose with white, well, you're in horrible shape for the match. So our man Sam is there, Sam Shankland. And Sam's doing really well. He's still over 2,700. So he was playing Eltaj Safarli, very nice fellow who originally from Iran, but now been in America for a while. Sam had the white pieces. And just to give you a sense of what it's like to play in this knockout, Sam starts with white and he just presses his advantage. He's not doing anything tricky in the opening like Carlsen. He plays classical, straightforward chess. Safarli fianchettos the bishop. We get a kind of neo-Grunfeld. And both sides develop classically. Safarli exchanges on c4. And you'll see his plan. Sam developed. Safarli takes the knight on f3, giving the bishop pair, but he gets his break pawn to e5, so everything's out. He's just getting some minimal disadvantage. Sam takes to avoid the isolated pawn, saves his bishop pair, and then nice straightforward play in the center by black. And Safarli develops the queen. So you could do something a little tricky like retreat the queen, try to keep play on the board, but Sam is playing very principally and thinks he gets a better endgame. He's got the bishop pair. So small advantage. Safarli retreats. Pawn to b5, taking some squares, and the knight's got 1 square to go to. So here's Safarli trades down and trades. And maybe I wouldn't show you this game just for the sake of a game, but for the sake of the whole event that's going on for 2-3 weeks there. You get to a position like this, and Sam got to it. What do you do? If it's a
Rook d7 here?
you could play rook d7, or you could take the bishop. 1 vote for taking the bishop, 1 vote for rook d7. Yes, and you'd say, well, maybe white's a little better in both cases. But this is, in fact, an extremely critical point of the game and of the match. White's a, in fact,
Take the knight, it's like overdrawn.
Well, you get to take the a7 pawn too.
yes, you're going to take the knight, you're going to take the a7 pawn, you're going to have active rooks. Now, this is, in fact, what Sam did, so we'll get to that, where he takes the knight and takes the pawn, and he was better, and he ends up winning a pawn. But there's these bishops of opposite color to worry about. And here he needed to play like Magnus. And it's so much pressure on you that you have to play like Magnus. He could have taken the bishop. The knight causes trouble on these pawns here. You kind of kick the knight, and it can come causing trouble. And maybe Sam didn't quite appreciate it. He still could have kept an advantage if he moves the rook that's on the open file to this square and push the pawn to c4. And that would be a slight advantage, maybe even more than slight advantage. The computer gives it as plus 0.7 something. But this is a position where you have some real chances to win. Yeah, against Magnus, I think Safarli wouldn't stand much chance on the black side of this. But as you say, it looked so tempting to just get this activity, and Sam grabbed the knight, the pawn took, he grabbed the pawn, so the doubled rook's on the 7th that looked very threatening. So, but he trades a pair of rooks. And, okay, this rook is better than that. The rook comes here, kind of planning for back rank mates, which Sam avoids, of course. Down. King to f1, rook to here, rook to c2, bishop f3, king to g7. The one thing Sam has going for him is that this diagonal's blocked, so the rook and bishop can't double up on the f2 square, whereas if this bishop could somehow attack f7, then he'd have some real winning chances. But he's playing a rather good grandmaster who's not going to just roll over. And at this level, we'll see Sam Sam's ready. He figures he can win both of these pawns here. Which h4, h5. So rook to b6. Yes, if the pawn comes to c5, you take the b pawn, and that would be some real trouble.
What's the status of 4 versus 3 on the king side?
We are going to get to that question. Safarli just took. And bishop takes, and here is where a lot of people would go wrong. Like say you push that pawn, okay, it's some chance of it going, but now rook to b7, and if you line up the bishop on the f7 and you get that pawn, you have very serious winning chances, excellent winning chances.
Right now, it's just rook takes f7 check, right?
You know what? Bishops of opposite color, you want to keep the rooks on. You'd be surprised how easy it is to draw in bishops of opposite color. So I wouldn't do that move. I would play here to keep the rook.
But rook takes f7 is back winning. If white's move here, rook takes f7 might be winning anyway.
Maybe. This is surely winning. But, okay. But in any case, Safarli, he went into this with the idea that he's simply going to draw this. The rook is on b6, and Safarli just plays, okay, this is what you do. Let's dampen everything, take out. The only real threat you have is to get that pawn. Safarli stops that. Bishop e7, and the rook attacks, so you're lining up. But he just guards that and says, you can never get to my f7 pawn. Okay, Sam takes his extra pawn, and we get to this situation, which is what you might have anticipated when you did that move, rook takes knight, that you were looking that you'd have extra pressure, you'd garner a pawn here, and you'd get to this 3 against 4 bishops of opposite color. And yeah, if you could do something, attack that, maybe, yes. But this is in fact dead drawn. It's just, you know, any advance of these pawns just gets traded off. So maybe Sam got to this position. So Farley just, okay, keep the bishop pinned, cause some trouble here. King came to f3. All right, he moved the bishop to c5 because the bishop's not on that diagonal. He can always move it back to e7. And Sam decided what's he going to do here?
How many more moves did he play before the green?
Well, yeah, I mean, you pawn to e4. Rook takes pawn is actually mate. So. Yeah, you could check the king up, rook back, repeat. Sam did here to get out of the pin, but and then he looked and decided, well, it's a draw, and offered a draw. And suddenly he's used up his 1 white in the match. So tomorrow he's going to have the black pieces, and it's really hard to win with black. You know, you first have to defend, even if you're 100 points or 150 points higher rated than your opponent. You have to play logically. So he's probably just got to go into the shorter time control tie breaks, and the shorter the time control, anything can happen. The next game I'll show is somebody who really is able to control the situation, Maxime Vachier-Lagrave. And he did get a somewhat easier opponent than Sam, but the way he takes control of the match is very nice. And he was rated, I believe, number 2 there.
Working upon
Thank you. That would have been a different game. So MVL has the black side. It's also nice to have black in your first game. It helps. You can sort of play, not to take too many risks. It's a 2-game match, so if you're a draw with black, then the second game you get white and you can push harder. His opponent is an international master really from Nigeria. A bit better than Sean Pressman from Papua New Guinea. So, well, yeah.
So this is the World Cup?
The World Cup.
How many people get into this?
128 players.
And it's by some sort of regional playoffs or by ranking?
Yes, for instance, each zone, FIDE has 14 zones or something, and they each get a certain number of players. And I think the United States, we've got about 5 people in it. We have Wesley So, who won his first round game. Nakamura, who drew his first round game. And as good as Nakamura is, it's already, he could lose the first round. And Jeffrey Zhang and Sam Sevian are 2 young players. They won their first games. They got someone somewhat lower rated than they are, but that's quite good. They
And one more, Linear Dominguez.
Oh, how could I forget? And Dominguez also won his first game. So that gives us 6 players, and what did we get? Actually, 4 victories. That's pretty good. But how to control the situation? I mean, these guys, whoever they are in this tournament, they're talented. They may not be as good as Kramnik, but they're the best in their countries, so they know how to hit you if they get a good, clean shot. So Anvili has the white pieces, and we see in English, MVL is always very well prepared in his openings, and likes to play these asymmetrical openings where there's more play in. G3 or classic English, and Bishop B4 was a line seen in a lot of these Karpov-Kasparov games from their World Championship matches. Castles. And so you could do different things as black, but MVL has worked out this variation. You kick the knight on F3, knight goes to G5, and you have too many pieces on the E4 square, so you've got to get rid of the knight on C3. And really takes towards the center. And now black has time to guard that advanced E-pawn, which is causing some trouble. So he plays the theoretical move, break up the center. MVL just takes it. The knight takes back on F3, and you think black has the bishop pair and these center pawns. Kasparov liked this position with the white side. But MVL has this worked out quite well. He does a straightforward advance in the center, just taking that space. And he's not afraid of undoubling the pawns. Unwearly takes it, and MVL takes with the queen, which I'm sure he had prepared before. There's no really good discovered attack. The queen can go to C5 or something if knight to D4. So, and meanwhile, all the black pieces are nicely developed. So this seems about even. I ran it by the computer. The computer also feels it's about even. And maybe white should just tuck the king in the corner. Computer suggests pawn to E4, and really goes pawn to E3, which is just a little off.
You speculated D4, you said.
But pardon, the computer suggested pawn to D4. Maybe knight to E5 would be some idea. It gives this about equal. I think MVL would play the same move he did in the game. After the pawn came to E3, probably you would think to do this move too. Develop your bishop to try to control these squares down here. Well, you asked the question and you did it. Yes, you discover attack on the queen and on the bishop.
Did he play bishop f5?
He played bishop f5 and he played knight to d4.
I mean, he got bishop f4. It's not like he loses.
Yes, he wouldn't have done it otherwise. And what's very nice of that is you're trying to trade off the white squared bishop, which is right now the good bishop in the position since the pawns are on the dark squares. And already black is feeling pretty happy in this position. But another reason to show this game is I liked how it went And from all these super grandmasters, they play so close to the vest. But people in some of these other countries, they like the wild and free play. And really plays pawn to c4 on that queen.
Also crazy is like rook to f5.
Rook to f5, attacking.
Attacking the queen, you can't take it with bishop, basically.
Yeah, that's true.
That's pretty
Just
tricky.
back to D7.
Yeah, probably I would have to retreat to d7. It's
Well, then rook takes F6.
okay. You know,
Except for those on the king is off the bishop, doesn't matter, the rook's good.
So they used to play.
I remember
you know, Mike, you are getting some of the same ideas as this international master here, and I think no. I think next time we need to put you in the World Cup. You.
Or Africa, okay.
Actually, if you kind of move to one of these islands in the Caribbean or Papua New Guinea, then you can qualify and a 2-game match against some of these guys.
You get the Bermuda still?
Well, no, I always played for America. I only coached the Bermuda team. But yes, they would get a player in there who would get knocked out in the first round.
Instead, white played.
Yes, maybe rook f5 was better. He decided to play pawn to c4.
Actually has some kick to it.
It's kind of interesting. It's
Because if the queen takes, you swap the bishops and then fork.
well, but that's also my first thought. But MBL just took. He's courage, and if you swap and play pawn to d3, takes, it doesn't quite work. You can hit the rook on a1, and so you've won a pawn.
Those sneaky super GMs.
So that I thought was his idea, and maybe it was, but then he decides to do something just really aggressive.
F6. It gets interesting.
Well, he did bishop to b2, and MBL took the bishop here. And now, especially just to make you guys happy, yes, he didn't take the bishop, he did rook takes f6. Pardon?
I guess they'll probably take the bishop now.
Well, it is black's move.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's like black fighter retreats bishop.
Well, you can, yes, you're playing a very aggressive player. He's got a lot of ideas with this bishop, with queen checks and things. And your question is, okay, I don't want to screw up, lose one game to this wild attacking player, and then I'm out of the World Cup. So, in case you happen to meet a wild attacking player here on Tuesday nights, I seem to know quite a few of them.
I resemble that.
And what I like about this is MVL says, okay, I'm going to dampen your enthusiasm. I know you're having fun here, but not too much fun. I worked long and hard to get my rating up and get in the World Cup and make the candidates tournament and such. Well, you could back off with the bishop. Maybe knight f5 then, queen to g4.
Well, I'm not taking the knight.
Okay. That's the first thing. He said, all right, calm down. This guy could be a big troublemaker. So first, let me get rid of this. I'm not getting too greedy, just taking an exchange and having, well, we should look at pawn takes rook. That's, we're all automatically looking at these other defensive moves, but Like you could take the rook, and objectively, if you're alpha 0, this is better for the white side. You start with a check, and see, I don't think you want to go in the corner. Computer didn't like that either because of queen h4 probably. You could come here, and the bishop could check. Knight here. I'm not sure if we go queen to h4 first or take the bishop. Yeah, probably queen h4. Oh yeah, this, threatening takes and checkmate. So white's having a good time here. It's again, the computer thinks it's better for black somewhat, but it'd be so easy to get checkmated in this position. King to g7, well, you can win the queen, or bishop takes knight. So this is okay. Well, it went knight takes knight, and bishop takes knight. And then what's the pawns? 2, 4, 5 against 6. So would you move your bishop or take the rook? I'd give you those two choices. Mr. Winslow wants to move the bishop.
I don't want to move the bishop. Mainly because white has all these light square holes and it seems weak. And having a light square bishop and a queen on that seems good long term.
Move the bishop and checkmate.
So something like move the bishop here, and he moves his queen out, and you want to just checkmate him?
Well, that didn't work.
That yes. Rook takes bishop, threatening queen g2, queen g7 mate.
I'd be tempted to move the bishop to h3 to prevent queen g4.
You could, but then this is a very powerful bishop on d4. The bishop on the long diagonal is its strongest place. At this point, MVL did take the exchange, but to get rid of the knights helped a lot. You want material, but you don't want too much trouble, and you have to balance those two. Yes, you certainly could go queen g4 check and king f8. That's he is threatening pawn to c5. But yeah, you certainly could do that. He just took the bishop first. And then MBL checked. King to g1, and then guard that pawn that blocks the bishop. You certainly don't want that bishop roaming free. And I've really checked. Interpose the queen, and queen came back, threatening b7. Yeah, you don't want trouble on both sides of the board. So here, and rook to f1. Okay, he sacrificed an exchange and a pawn, but this is play over here. So, okay, as I'm counting on at least Mike to play in the next World Cup, what do you do here from the black side? How do you win this match? You want to advance to the next round.
Rook takes bishop. Yeah, so rook to d8. It's too easy.
Okay. Yeah, this would be my first thought, King G7, and he's going to go H4, some things, try to throw up the pawns to G4, G5. Have fun. Yes, but actually, you're doing well. You suggested MVL's move. He said, no fun for you. Just, I'm the one who's going to enjoy myself, plus I'm going to win the game.
In fact, back the reference position, I think
Yeah, this is what this takes all the fun out of it for white. Because the main line is, of course, to take the pawn on f6, and he just says, okay, fine, you've been attacking me, sacrificing, doing all that, but now we're just going to trade. Not only do I have an extra pawn, I have your king cut off on the 7th, you have weak pawns. I'm MVL, and this is a childish win in the endgame for me. He was.
It's like the Capo variation against the Danish gambit. This played deep. No fun at all.
Yes, it's very professional.
The guy takes off his glove to slap you and charge you with and back off.
Were all those exchanges at the end where they kind of forced?
If you take this bishop, if you take this pawn, well, you certainly have to take the bishop, threatening everybody. And if he takes that, you take him, he takes. So those exchanges are forced. But in fact.
But it was initiated by white.
And that was the big question. In fact, he didn't take the pawn.
Bishop C3.
Oh.
He did rook to f2.
Oh, that wasn't how the game played.
Well, that's it. But if you play a move like that, you're offering the main line, the critical line, to take the pawn.
Somebody like me would do.
Which it's probably the best move. Even it's anything now is bad, because you're willing to just give back the material and get a much better or winning endgame, and that's very professional and takes the fun out of it for your opponent. So really, he didn't want to do that, but then we're going to see again that MVL's just not letting him have any fun anyway. Rook f2, he says, fine, I'm advancing, take the pawn again if you want. So he attacks that, but see, the king's here, not where a pawn to g5 would pin it. So he's not doing any damage. King to h2. And then just to make sure there's no fun, bam, take that guy. You're still a pawn up. He's got all these kind of split bad pawns and no chance of attack. So, and he says, well, okay, also trade the queens besides that. He didn't, of course, he's just trying to avoid all the traded now, but he's giving up the beautiful diagonal, so this queen is super powerful in the middle. And well, it's completely lost. The rook is coming down here, no attack. So he tries an endgame, a pawn down, which MVL is saying, well, I want to endgame a pawn down where your pawns are all bad. Doesn't want to take to do that, so and I may as well show you the finish. This is wrap up for a super grandmaster. Okay, we will see how he does it. He kind of calculates. He did rook to f4. He comes here. He's not worried. this is sort of a defensive pawn. It doesn't have any long-term future to win on the king side. He wants to win on the queen side. King, rook to b2, and here was his idea. Pawn to d5, takes, rook d4, guarding this and attacking the d5 pawn. But what does he do now? Yeah, he just takes, and he had kind of calculated that this endgame is winning, which he's 2 pawns up, but one's very doubled. So he's kind of hoping for something. Rook to b5, rook takes, so kind of like 1 pawn down, but this rook has to become so passive, always watching that you don't queen that pawn. And so king g4. Now, anyone want to make this very easy for the black side? What, pardon? You could. You could. I bet you can win this in a number of ways, but the most efficient way is so clear.
Rook to f2.
Thank you, Mike. Rook to f2 keeps this king in the box. And then it's kind of trivial. The rook holds this, keeps the king in the box, and this is all over but the shouting. King, 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 king. Rook here to stop h5 check. So he goes pawn to h5 check. But of course you can't take it. And pawn. Now the king has no moves. The pawns have no moves. And the rook has to move somewhere on the A file. Stops you from going to there, but the king comes out. So it just marches up.
White is down the king.
Yeah, just make sure he doesn't get stalemated. But unfortunately for him, he always has this move, which, yeah. Normally people would resign, but he's probably not had that many top-level opponents. Check, king to d2, rook a7, king uncovers the rook.
Gonna go G1 maybe.
Check. Hoping for some stalemates, but there are no stalemates. King here and, yep, rook takes, you can take it without stalemate, so he finally resigned. And that was such control by black. It was, whenever the game started to get too crazy, he'd say, well, I'm not that greedy, I'm not trying for too much, just give me some small advantage or give me some better endgame. And he was never in any trouble there. So definitely time for some of our games from the Tuesday night marathon. All sorts of great positions. And as the time's a little short, I may just get to those really critical positions. Okay, let's start off with Carlos. I think this was board 4. Bishop. Bishop. Work on C8, kings here. Now, do I have everything? No rook here. Pawn, 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 pawn. 2 bishops, queen, rook, rook. Maybe I should go back just a couple moves or something. Yes, let's just see. It was oh well, the 2. Yeah, let's. So in this position, A5, Carlos sacrificed his knight. There's a g-pawn here. Material is all even. It looks like a Sicilian defense, but it was actually a Pirtz defense. And Carlos sacrificed his knight on h5, which tears open the king side. Elliot was rightfully afraid of that and just pushes here. But the knight comes to f6 check, just causing huge trouble. Knight takes f6. Pawn takes f6, bishop takes f6, bishop takes c8, rook takes c8. So white has won the exchange and objectively winning the position, but okay, it's a little unbalanced because of castling on opposite wings. And Carlos defends the second rank. Bishop comes to e7, pawn to h4, pawn to d5. And here you might think of what we just saw, Maxime Vachier-Lagrave. You've got a crazy position, but you want to keep it in enough control. Now, anybody who plays Carlos knows that he plays crazy chess. He throws things out. Have you got a comment about Carlos, Jerry?
No, but you're right, Bill.
So Carlos just goes for it up here and tearing open the king side, which of course must be good, but you're giving black play. The exchange up and here, and then takes on f3. So, okay, that king side's torn apart, but you have some problems here too. And can you control it is the thing. And anyone want to suggest a move for Carlos here?
Can you just step back, like rook g1 or rook h2?
I think,
Double check. Start what's there?
okay, it's like, yeah, you could, You could go back and, gee, I don't know if we go pawn takes on g6. We might do that since the, yeah, queen takes here. You could do that. Black does have some pawns, it's some counterplay. And probably the first move you look at is pawn takes check, which is what Carlos did. But does anyone have a knockout blow here for the...
Bishop d6, queen h2.
Ah, thank you. Yes, everybody's hanging there. It's... Yes, like tall. But that one is, that clears the path for the queen. It doesn't matter if you take it or queen c6, the rook is still guarding this pawn. But take it or queen c6, you just have your attacking pieces alive for the instant it takes to kill that king. The rook is a goner, but you're threatening queen check and mate. And there's just absolutely nothing to be done here.
Queen f6. Then queen f6 stops.
And
It doesn't stop that g takes f1.
okay,
Queen h7 and then g7 check. And then
queen h7 here, g7. Get a second queen with check. That would be very good.
That's the only try. I think.
Probably the best try, you know, mate in 5 instead of mate in. So credit to Carlos for playing a really, you know, great attack. And
Did he play bishop e6?
no, he played pawn takes f7, which looks so logical. And king takes, and funny, you know, thanks to this bishop, that king's not dead over there, and you've got these pawns. And so now he moved the rook away. The rook came to d8. So now the white attack's not nearly so strong. Bishop attacks the rook. Rook goes back. Bishop comes over, defending those squares, attacking here. See, you give these guys a chance, you know, especially that, you know, Wiley Elliott, and it's just tough. And now black is okay. He defended the pawn with the rook, maybe not so good. And now the pawns come advancing. Queen comes up, but the bishops are kind of defending those squares. So black's attack is very serious. And then this wasn't quite right. Pawn takes check. King to a1. King to e6, and now there's not even a check against the black king. So he takes that advanced pawn. But there's a killer blow here.
bishop takes a3.
Okay, let's prepare that just a moment. It's actually, because white doesn't have a threat.
Rook to c8.
I watched this game on the screen.
Okay. All right, let's,
Rook to c8.
maybe not bad, but even more powerful.
Look at d1.
Rook to d3.
Rook to d3. Thank you. You're threatening rook takes pawn check. Queen's gonna come in check, check, takes mate. And unfortunately, there's just no way out. Carlos took the pawn, but after Elliot, oh well. It actually went takes, rook to c1, but the rook was pinned, so
Just chop the rook.
chopped the rook, and Carlos resigned. Kind of tragedy for Carlos, but it was a great game he played, and if he had just for 1 minute been like MVL, then he would have reeled in that point. So let's go to another great game, or another great position. Here we are. Rook on b8, king, bishop, queen, pawn, bishop on f8. Thank you. Couple white pawns. So here, white is the exchange ahead. And here is the 39th move of Nick Cesares and Jaden Du. And white to move and crash through. Sorry, knight where?
A5.
Knight a5. Very logical move. Now, I could take that. Bishop takes check, I assume, and the king kind of runs over. Sort of maybe. Yeah, I'll take your queen. Oh, you know, I'm sorry. I've screwed this up. There's actually only one rook here, and I made that, yes, I made that too easy for you guys. It's left that from the last game. 1, 2, 3, yes, it's the exchange down. You're the exchange down, 2, 4, 6, 2, 4, 6. Full exchange down, but you've got all your pieces. Okay, knight takes b6, so you're now going to a full rook down.
Yeah, and then you can take a d8.
Ah, such a move. You know, there's all this power on the B line, but you deflect it. Have to take the bishop. Check. One legal move. Still, I'm ahead 1 bishop. Fortunately, there's these pawns, so this can't come out check. And that rook is way in the corner, so we don't play for draws here. We're like men of honor. Yes.
Queen a7 check.
And then I'll get queen to c7.
Rook b6.
What was that?
Rook b6, cutting off the queen.
Cutting off the defender.
And then you can play rook a6 and then bring it to
But then you can play queen, queen A7 and rook B8 mate probably.
Yes, your threat is this horribly powerful queen A7 check, king to the back rank, rook mates. And queen check, okay, it's a check, but it's only one queen and there's no perpetual back here. So there, Nick, was one of your wins. It's
I downloaded the game and you showed me this.
okay.
Thank you.
Well, this even the rest of the game, which we don't quite have time to show, but great action and some very interesting stuff happening.
Oh, I guess king H1.
Yes. Anyway, I guess we could have come here to H2 first, but as long as we have one move to get in, queen A7 check. Yeah, and the white attack is winning. Okay, I guess it's time for Abel to take over. Good luck.